Tano, and excited today for Reilly Brown. We're tackling the topic of working with student athletes. And I met Reilly through kind of social media and also through her store on RD2RD. And personally, just a little, background story. Reilly's Instagram profile her feed is awesome. Such personality and the way that she really translates nutrition into interesting visuals and provides not just an interesting visual, but of a ton of actionable information for people who follow her page. I really thought she would be a great person to come on and share in a similar fashion her experience working with student athletes as a relatively new dietitian and kind of what she has planned, what her experience has been, and give you guys a chance to ask her questions. So again, the live show is really, you showed up here today wanting to learn, get your questions answered. So if there's something that's burning that you want to make sure we cover, be sure you go ahead and drop it in the comments now. I'm going to switch over throughout the show, take a look at the questions and bring them up so that you make sure to get your questions answered too. So Reilly, thank you so much for coming on today. I know live video can be a little intimidating, but it'll be a lot of fun today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to become a dietitian.
Yeah, well, thank you for that really nice intro. That was really sweet. So I've been a dietitian for about 8 months now. So, took my exam in September. So relatively new, but loving it so far. I am Los Angeles based. And as you mentioned, I do work with student athletes. So I am the dietitian at the California State University of Northridge Athletic Department. I'm there full time. And then I also own like a private practice where I see other college athletes, and then I see college bound student athletes.
Oh, so you pretty much live and breathe college athletes.
I kind of like it.
This is when you always say you should niche down. You're like, okay, check, nailed it.
Yes.
I've got that down. So how did you get to be, how did your passion for sports nutrition happen?
Yeah, so I've been an athlete all my life. I grew up on a soccer field and I played soccer collegiately. So I played at NC State University, which is in North Carolina. And I didn't really care too much about nutrition as a student athlete. I have always loved food. So that's why I kind of majored in nutrition. I didn't really understand the importance of it until I graduated. So I was hurt a lot of my soccer career in college. I know, bummer. And I think it would have been really different if I had prioritized nutrition. So once I got out, I started, doing adult things, started in my master's, and I really learned that nutrition is so important for student athletes. And I made it my mission to help student athletes not make the same mistakes I did.
Nice. Actually, I remember when we chatted, but that the challenge of kind of food insecurity and just the challenge of fueling on really a limited budget as a student athlete really has stuck with me. It's been something I've been actually thinking about since then, some of the challenges that we forget that are maybe unique to that population. So I'm looking forward to chatting more about that and other topics. So you mentioned that you work with a college athletic department and also in private practice. So I think getting into a little bit more detail about maybe the types of services that you offer, what does that look like? What's that kind of work, the work that you do? What does that entail?
Yeah. The cool thing about sports nutrition is every single day is different. You're adapting a lot to what teams want. And then each team culture is so different. But I do a variety of the same kind of things in both sides. So I do a lot of group talks. I'll do team talks. I'll do small group talks, so maybe 4 or 5 athletes. At the university, we have a fully functioning fueling station, which is kind of like a special sports nutrition snack bar for the athletes. So with that, the athletes can come in, they can get their pre and their post-workout nutrition. They can kind of get snacks throughout the day. With that, we're on like we talked about before with the budget, we're on a very tight budget with that. So we have about 60 cents a day to feed an athlete, which get creative. So that's a big part of what I do at school is providing that fuel for the athletes. I also do one-on-one work, grocery store tours, which are actually a huge hit.
Definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah, it was actually really cute right before this. I had a couple of my athletes like FaceTime me and they're like, we're at the grocery store. Like, will you walk through with us? So that type of thing.
And is that through your role as a dietitian within the athletic department? I'm always curious, how does that work? How do you decide the types of services that are going to be offered? What does that look like? And of course, how did you get a gig like that? That's awesome.
Thanks. For me, like, especially being a new dietitian, it's a lot of like trial and error, and seeing what works with different groups of people. So some athletes really respond well to like the group settings, and some respond really well to the individual counseling. So it's just being around and like being patient and not really forcing nutrition or what I think is going to be beneficial for that athlete, but really letting them come to me if they have questions. And as I've been at the university, my role has definitely evolved and changed. And the more I'm around, the more comfortable athletes feel comfortable coming up to me and, talking about nutrition. And I think that applies to anywhere in nutrition. Just the more you build a relationship with people, the more that they'll come to you and the more they trust you and the more they'll buy in and actually listen to your advice.
Yeah. So if we kind of, pivot and talking about, so you work in this, full-time, then working on seeing like private clients, and what is that, how does that, like, what types of work do you do for that?
Yeah. So they want a lot of like similar services. So a lot of like one-on-one counseling, a lot of group stuff. I also do grocery store tours. And then also something that's really popular with college athletes that are home over the summer or working with high school athletes is the nutrition boot camps.
Yes. So tell us exactly what this nutrition boot camp is, because I think this is brilliant and such a great opportunity to, one, have a service that also leads to kind of additional client one-to-one work. So please, let's chat about this.
Yeah. So I actually got the idea from some parents. So something that I've been really trying to do and work on lately in my business is like listen to what my clients and my athletes actually want. Right?
They're already telling you. You just have to listen, right?
Exactly. So
you're like, I have this great idea. Oh wait, they have better ideas.
Exactly. So the nutrition boot camp is great because a lot of college and also high school athletes, as we all know, are like very busy, and they want like, I think most people want this too. They want like a quick solution to their nutritional problem. And as dietitians, we know that's not always the case.
Like, you're going to need to work with me for a few months, right? And they're like, no.
Exactly. And what I've really noticed too is when the athlete themselves asks for nutrition to either their parent or their coach, that's when the coach and the parent will actually listen. So these nutrition boot camps are a great way for me to come in, to build a bond with the athlete, to get them a little bit started on nutrition, give them a couple pointers, build that rapport with them, and allow them, take some of these topics and kind of put them into action, on the court and all that stuff. And then also understand the importance of it, and then also see the need for it.
So what exactly is this boot camp that you do?
Yeah. So I have like a template, and that's on the RD to RD. And basically what I'll do with that is I'll kind of modify it depending on my population. So this is a very interactive.
So it's like a group program. It's
like a group program. I'll go in, I'll talk to the team. It's a PowerPoint presentation that kind of guides the agenda, so we have something to go off of. We will do, some like education. We'll play a couple games, which they absolutely love, and I cannot recommend enough. We'll make a snack. we'll kind of go to lunch, possibly, those type of things. So just a really great way to get in and like build rapport and show the athletes that.
So is this something where, you get asked to go, there's a, high school sports team or any group of athletic people, they want a dietitian to come in and speak. How do you get asked to do that? What has been from a marketing angle to get these boot camps, how does that work?
Yeah. Referral is probably the strongest thing I've found. So really going in and as a new dietitian, I wanted to get in and kind of just grow my business. So going in and just building rapport with parents and athletes, and getting them to refer me has been huge. So I can't recommend, like, if you are interested in sports nutrition, just like reaching out to local high schools, local colleges, local athletes, local gyms, and just start like getting your name out there, and just, like getting your foot in the door, because after that it's
Got it. Yeah, the boot camp sounds, when you get asked to, putting something together, being able to speak to a group and have a great template and kind of way to approach it that works. It's really, really smart idea. So I like that.
Thank you.
I like that. So do you find that if we I just love this topic, but, if we talk about, you mentioned what's been the most effective, having the games, having that activity, because I think, sitting and listening to a PowerPoint presentation can be, as far as when you're working with groups versus working with people one-to-one, what's the most effective, approaches that you might share with someone who's, trying to get started?
Yeah. I think a hands-on experience. And then I always love, like, if I'm going and doing like a free 15-minute talk, or if I'm going to do a boot camp, I love starting off with a game. So not necessarily we go around and we do an icebreaker, but like, let's break up into teams because athletes are so competitive, and let's play a game. This gets them talking, and then this gets them interacting with me, and we start to bond over something that's not necessarily nutrition based. So they know I'm there. I'm hopefully fun. I'm, there to have a good time. I'm not there to just talk about how they need to eat salad for the next 4 hours.
My mom said I need to come and listen to this dietitian talk.
Exactly. So they're pleasantly surprised that they have to run around and do a scavenger hunt, or we're going to play Nutrition Jeopardy. Just those type of things.
So you mentioned if you do it like as a talk, do you find most of the time, are you coming in with your boot camp as a paid service, or what is your plans for that? What's changed? How do you structure that for your business?
Yeah. And it's definitely changed kind of as I have evolved as a dietitian and as a business. And now it is a paid service. So I do charge per athlete to attend. And I do say, okay, I need a minimum of 10 athletes to be at these boot camps.
Nice.
So that's how I structure that.
Nice. So maybe initially you were kind of getting, going in and offering that, because I so many groups, people like never give anything away for free. It's, you have to, our profession's not valued unless you do, you charge for things. And I think there's that whole, the value of kind of getting your own experience, learning what works, and then growing that perhaps into a paid service. Wondering about your perspective on that, because people have strong feelings, right?
Yeah. And so I think that I need to get value out of every experience that I do with an athlete. But the value for me is not always monetary. So if I'm like, when I first started the boot camp, I was like, I'm going to charge maybe like $5 per athlete. Or maybe I'm just going to go give a free 15-minute presentation because I want to see how this dynamic works. I want to see what does work and what doesn't work. So I'm going to be very clear up front, like, this is the first time I've done this, so I'm going to offer this as a free service. But once I've, kind of, I guess, like banged out the kinks, then now this is a paid service.
Right. Now you've matured a service that you can continue to grow, and, have it monetized now. Charge more for your boot camp. I really like that. So, So we kind of change from a little bit of the type of work you do and talk a little bit more about the specific challenges of college athletes and the ones that you work with. What are the kind of top challenges that you're most often helping with?
Yeah. And I'm just going to kind of speak to my position, because I'm sure it will change per university. But where I work at CSUN, we're a mid-tier Division I university. So we have about 350 student athletes, and we have 17 teams, but we don't really have a football team. We're not too big of a sports school. So if you think of like a University of Michigan and Alabama, you think of, these glamorous sports nutrition facilities, and that's just not really what's happening at CSUN. We will be there one day, but not yet. So the big thing for me is, and I was actually really shocked by this coming in, and a lot of my interns are shocked by this, but the amount of food insecurity I see with my athletes. A lot of these athletes don't have the funds to, fuel properly. And a lot of the time they're skipping meals because they don't realize, like they don't have the resources. So I going in, I'm surprised by the amount of like food insecurity work I do, but it's amazing. The reward is amazing for these athletes. And just when they come to the fueling station and they're like, now I can finally go to class and I'm not hungry, is an amazing, it's like, oh.
Yeah, because you're working so hard, and so awful to be thinking they're going to class super hungry, right? Not fueled.
Yeah. So I bring about usually 5 or 10, this last semester, we really focused on connecting them with on-campus resources. So about every week we had at least 5 or 10 student athletes that would sign up with a food pantry on campus, make sure that they're aware of the services. So get them signed up with CalFresh, which is the new EBT food stamps. A lot of them qualify for that. So, okay, we'll go get you signed up, and then we'll take you to the grocery store. So we'll figure out how you can spend these funds.
So you mentioned like grocery store tours as we went back. So that seems, so you're having some challenge. How do you stretch your food budget, right? But with a college athlete in mind, how do you make that, interesting? What's the typical reaction that you get to that? I'm just curious how, that conversation happens, what you find helpful.
It's actually hilarious when you have 25 huge athletes walking around the grocery store with you. People are always like, what the heck is going on? Exactly. So that's fun. But they actually really love them. The athletes have total buy-in. They love it. I think the whole idea of doing something hands-on it resonates so well with an athlete. So just really going through with them. A lot of them have never even read a weekly ad, or don't realize that these things might be on sale. So, just showing them okay, these are foods that maybe we should prioritize to be organic. Maybe we should prioritize these to be organic. Maybe we don't prioritize organic because it's not in your budget. How do we buy in bulk and learn how to freeze? Or, fresh fruit and then frozen fruit have the same nutritional value. So what are we doing so we're not wasting food? What are we buying generic versus what are we buying name brands? That type of thing. And a lot of athletes don't realize that these are easy ways to save money.
Yes, which I think is really interesting. We think about sports nutrition and we think about college athletics, whereas, I don't know, you have this totally different picture in your mind. At least, you've got your supplements and you've got these, you just don't think about some of that basics. And I always think nutrition, it's such a building block, the fundamentals, right? Of shopping, preparing these. You can't do anything up here till you've done some of the building blocks. So I love that, honestly, connecting them up with resources on campus, that knowing, that sometimes they're not tapped into what's out there because they don't know. And that's such a value for them as well. But there's a question here I want to make sure we get to about, so we've talked a lot about how you work with the athletes, about working with the coaches. So what's your interaction with prioritizing, or how does that dynamic happen?
Yeah. Coaches are all over the place. We have some coaches that are really, really have nutrition buy-in. There's some that don't want my help at all.
I think it's kind of like doctors in a hospital. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, wait.
Just kidding. No, wait, yes.
Yeah. And so that's why if you are, you know, looking to work with either a college program or a high school program, is just going in and for the first couple of months, just like really surveying the landscape and trying to understand the cultures of each team.
Yes, let's talk about kind of getting your foot in the door, what that might look like.
Yeah. Networking. I'm pretty sure everybody talks about it, but it is one of the most underrated things. I'm so thankful that I got this job, and I wouldn't have gotten it if I hadn't worked with other teams who had called the athletic department and recommended me. So thank you guys.
Yes. But some of those boot camp talks that you did that maybe weren't compensated or other things that then led to a position. I think it's so hard to, you know, put money, like put a value to some things that end up creating connections later on.
Exactly. And I think I agree with you 100%. So I do think you shouldn't do things that don't give you value, but how you define value, I think, is per person.
That's really good point. So kind of the coaches getting kind of the lay of the land. So getting your foot in the door to say, well, how, you know, I know some different sports teams locally, or maybe I'm near a college athletic program, offering that value. I think it's always coming in, what do I want? Well, I want a job at your place versus what are their needs, like framing it as the gaps and what's in it for them, right? How does this help their program from that angle? What are their biggest challenges, right?
And I think with coaches, the most important thing is and even parents too, is always tie it back to performance. So this is why it will help your athletes. And we know why it will help your athletes perform. And as dietitians, we know why it's going to make them healthier, but do coaches care much about that? They care a lot more about performance. So just tying everything back to performance. And then also just making sure that you go in and you develop a relationship with the coach and you show the coach that you're on their team. So like, how can I help you? It's not, I want to do this.
Right. Here's what I'm going to do to you. No. Or to your athletes. So we talked a little bit about the biggest challenges with athletes. So you mentioned kind of the food insecurity. What are some other big things that you focus on with the athletes that you work with, if we haven't covered them?
Yeah. No, definitely, you know, the food insecurity, as well as just general underfueling all across the board. They don't have a lot of time at all. If, you know, practice is supposed to end at 12 and a student athlete has class at 12:30, but practice ends at 12:15 and they're supposed to eat a meal, shower, walk across campus in 15 minutes. Like, that's probably not going to happen. So what can we do to make sure that they're fueling properly? What snacks can they keep in their backpack? So I definitely believe that time is a huge factor. I also see a big thing I see, like getting kind of technically with nutrition, is backloading of calories. And I see this in high school and college athletes.
Ooh, so break this down.
That's where athletes aren't really eating throughout the day. So we don't eat breakfast. We will skip on lunch. We might have a snack. We go to practice in the afternoon or we have a game, and then we are starving and we eat 3 McDonald's hamburgers after practice.
Right.
So just not consistent feeling throughout the day.
Nice. So when you're working, do you typically see people one-to-one? Do you see them once? Do you see them every week? Or are you just meeting them at the fueling station? How does that work?
Yeah. So in my private practice, I will do nutrition boot camps. So meet with teams like once or twice or whatever. And then I do a coaching package, because if you come and see me once, you're going to do something for a week and then you're going to fall off the wagon. So I meet with athletes. My coaching package is a minimum of 3 months for that. And then with the athletes at the athletic department, it's continuous. I will meet with them formally. Some of them want to meet with me all the time, but those informal conversations after our, first meeting go such a long way. And that goes back to just being present and building that rapport. And having those those little casual conversations.
Yeah. So I want to ask a question because I always find it interesting. So you do, coaching work one-to-one, and then you are also, that's just really awesome on Instagram. You have quite a few followers. I'm, pretty envious of your awesomeness on Instagram because I'm just not as awesome. But do you see Instagram as a marketing tool to try to drive? How does that fit in? Like, where does your social media, as you mentioned, ways like you're bringing in clients, you're still, I always like to talk to someone, you've been a dietitian for 8 months, yet you seem so focused with your vision and what you're doing. You're just it's fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So honestly, Instagram is kind of growing as I grow. I started it 2 years ago when I wasn't a dietitian, just because people are like, oh, you're a nutrition student. Like, tell me what you're eating. So I was like, I'm just going to put it all in one place. And then as I have kind of evolved, I've always been for the last 5 years, I was like, I want to be a sports dietitian. So I've always kind of known. And then now as I find with counseling, I started to find themes, and I was like, instead of just helping one person, I should just put it on Instagram. Because then other people, can start to learn about this. And I've gotten, very passionate about showing that information.
Yeah, no, it's great. So kind of where Instagram goes as far as, because I always think you have to be on social media and, get new clients. Do you find that the vast majority, are coming from, locally from networking and word of mouth, and that, social media is an outlet for you to teach and educate and build your platform? Because it was really interesting, the last call with, our live show with Leslie Wittower, we were talking about, this idea that we put in our head that, some of our best clients are the ones that we just happen to run into, or we forget that, just start that conversation, open the door for them to come to possibly, have a call with you, that somehow but no, it has to be on social media and they have to sign up for my email list and they got to get my onboarding sequence. That's how I get clients. We create this wall around it.
I think we definitely, and I've caught myself doing it too, where we get so wrapped up in the online presence that we start to undervalue that human connection. So I think both is important, especially that social media is, such a huge platform right now. And it is something that we're all looking at. And that's also kind of why I started focusing on college athletes, because so many of the college athletes and so many of the athletes I work with are on social media, and they're getting social media BS, right? So just coming up with, that platform to help them see that their information that they're seeing is not applicable to them.
Got it.
So it helps kind of strengthen my case, maybe.
Yeah. And I actually find it interesting that so you have your own personal social media account, and then I've noticed the Cal State will say, hey, check out our dietitian's post. So I think it's really interesting, you're not running the social media for the school's nutrition, which I really think that's interesting. It's your platform, it's your audience, and I really think that's what's smart of you, and it's that's kind of an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, and a lot of the athletes at my school do follow me and they use those resources, but I do try to keep it very separate because I don't want that conflict of interest.
Yes.
So I do kind of, I do try to keep it separate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really, you mentioned, we'll go off into that tangent, but it's challenging sometimes when you work for an employer, there's very strict rules about what you can do on the side, or they won't let you do certain things. So I think it's always important to have that conversation and, like you said, kind of keep it separate as well. So this will be a really fun question. We talked a little bit about the challenges that you deal with. So the, fueling or eating everything at the end of the day, food insecurity. We could talk about some others, but I would love to know kind of a day in the life for you. What is a dietitian who works with a sports, a school athletic program? What does a day look like? I think it would be really fun to just know.
Yeah. So I'm a morning person. I wake up really early. I like to get my workout in before work, because we have to practice what you preach. So get to work usually around 8. I will set up the fueling station, get my interns started. They're the kind of the
Do you have an intern regularly, or?
Yeah, I actually have usually. It's amazing how many people are interested in sports nutrition. So I have about 6 to 8 a semester.
Wow.
So I have about 2 of them every single day. So they kind of run the fueling station, and then I'm also in there as well. But we have different themes. So we'll do like Waffle Wednesday, we'll do Toast Tuesday, we'll do different things related to the
So you're
station.
putting all of those things together, all of those elements together for the fueling station, planning them out in advance, getting it executed on the day. Okay. Very good.
Yep. And then, so I'll try to plan for the next, like I'll plan a week in advance with ordering and all of that stuff. So spend maybe an hour and a half getting the fueling station up and running, getting the interns started, seeing all the morning athletes. Then I'll go.
When you say seeing those morning athletes, do you have like a block of time where they like book appointments, or is it kind of open door policy? How does that work?
Yeah. So initially in the morning, I'm just doing the casual conversations. It's in the fueling station. It's like feast or famine. So they'll all come in at one time. So we'll have like 30 people in there, and then we won't have anybody for like an hour. So at those hot times, I try to be in there just to reinforce, just to build that human connection with the athletes. And then after that, usually between maybe 9:30 and 11, I'll do athlete consultations. I do a lot of body comp. So I'm Isaac certified. So I do a lot of skin folds, which is another way to offer a service to the athletes to build that rapport. Mm-hmm. And then fueling station time, we're really busy between 11:30 and 1. So I'll be in there again, just helping out the interns, just answering questions that they have.
You mentioned your budget for the fueling station. So how do you tackle, right? I've got this much per person, and being responsible for ordering, staying on budget, those things we learned and we took on our RD exam, right? This food budgeting.
Yes. So I've basically administration gave me a budget, and then I just divided it per student athlete, per day and all of that stuff. Gave a factor of safety, all that good food service stuff came back useful.
I happen to be kind of a food service geek. I actually liked it. So
hey, it is actually real, and I'm always nailing it into my intern's head too. I'm like, you're actually going to use this.
Yeah, this is important. Don't check out during this section. It's valuable. Yeah. So then you see them, you go through the fueling station, lunchtime, super busy. And I like how you're talking about, you're starting that connection. You're making a human, expecting them to come to you, ask you questions. So really starting that conversation so that you can help them, whether they schedule a consultation, individual or not, finding all those touch points that you have with those athletes.
Yeah, because with athletes, and I think also anybody, right, but especially with athletes, is there's so much pressure on them to perform. And if they don't really trust me and think that I can help them succeed, then they're not going to come to me. So the more I'm around, the more I've noticed that they'll open up to me. They'll come to me. Also for them to understand that I always focus on the positive with the athletes. Everything is always about what are we adding in, not necessarily what we're taking out. Mm-hmm. So just them understanding that I'm not the food police, even though I am the food person in the department. I'm there to help them. I'm not there to tell them to restrict.
Right. Yeah. That you will do this, or you need to do this.
Yeah.
Help them understand why.
Yeah. So spend maybe 1 or 2 hours in the fueling station. And then in the afternoon, I will do a lot more athlete consultations, do some more paperwork. Basketball is our main sport. So I go out to basketball practice, just build a rapport with the athletes, build the rapport with the coaches.
What about the training? Is there a training staff that you interact with? What's the challenge there, if any?
I should have talked about this earlier, but the number one thing I recommend for any dietitian looking to develop a relationship in a sports nutrition or sports department is to build a connection with the athletic trainer. the athletic trainer is the individual that's going to spend the most time with the athletes as well as the coaching staff. And if you have them on your side, it's a great start. You can't help athletes if they're not coming to you and if you're not a priority in other people's minds. So just building that really strong relationship with the trainer. I've noticed that the more I interact with the athletic trainers, the more, again, building that in-person connection, I think is so underrated. But just building that with the athletic trainers, they'll start sending athletes my way.
So that includes just, informal conversations. What have you found to be the most effective ways to build relationships with the athletic trainers?
Yeah, I mean, going out to practice is a big thing, as well as like just getting to know them as your coworkers. So like asking them how they're doing, like actually like generally generally caring about them. Because, like an athletic trainer will hear an athlete be like, I didn't eat breakfast. And then now
they might say, hey, well, there's a fueling station. Maybe you should talk to Reilly.
Exactly. Or they're like, some of them like,
I don't have time to eat. You're like, yes, you do. Let's make this happen.
Yes, you do. Come talk to me. We'll figure it out.
Like, Reilly will hook you up with snacks that are totally going to work for 5 minutes when that's all you have.
Exactly.
Nice. So that's good. And I think, what about from a nutrition tip angle? I think sometimes people will talk about, trainers that are giving out nutrition advice that might not necessarily be. Have you had any struggle with that or any?
I mean, everybody eats, so everybody has their own opinion on things. But if you come off as that negative person, and I sometimes think dietitians, and I've definitely been guilty of it too, but when it's always like, no, then people are less likely to come to you. You just come off in a negative light. So I do like bi-weekly meetings with the trainers. So I'll sit down with like the group because they do like a sports medicine meeting. So I'll sit down with them and they can ask me any nutrition questions that the athletes have asked. Just again, like doing a little bit of education because I know athletes are going to come to them with questions because they are around them all the time. So as long as we're providing good education to the athletic trainers, then they can provide good education to the athletes.
Awesome. That's really helpful to kind of get a window into how you spend your day. It sounds very, very busy, very busy like everyone's. But what tips do you have, I guess, for dietitians that want to work with student athletes? Maybe they're kind of still sitting on the sidelines. We talked a little bit about the whole idea of networking, maybe business building activities, maybe getting a little bit more specific about what that might look like. That's maybe the first couple of things they could get out and do.
Yeah. Definitely,
do you just like cold call a local sports team? Like what might that look like?
I mean, so my private practice actually started really picking up when I started working out at a local gym because I was starting to work out with a lot of parents of sports, like of high school athletes. And it was like, just casually having conversations, or they'll see like my sports nutrition shirt that I'm working out in. And then they're like, hey, will you like work will you work with my athlete? And then it continues to go there. So I keep talking about this, but that human connection is really important.
Nice. Yeah.
As well as like, just, reaching out, right? Like just reaching out.
Say, hey, I offer I like that idea of that boot camp that, it's a great service and that sports teams are always looking, teach the athletes about nutrition. No, I don't want that. Yes, I want that. Like it seems like such a low barrier to, oh yeah, that would be awesome. Right.
Yeah. And with the boot camp, it's great because you can offer a service at a lower price point per athlete. Because what I found is a lot of parents initially, and for speaking for a high school athlete, don't want to pay what they should be paying for a dietitian, which I feel like we all kind of struggle with in our field. But really showing them the value, as well as I think that's also what Instagram has been really beneficial for too, is so many of the people that I work with are on Instagram. So a lot of the high school athletes, a lot of the college athletes. So you go in and you do that nutrition boot camp, but then they start following you on Instagram. So they're still in their mind. You continue to reinforce.
That's really a really good point about we talk about that whole idea of, it's typically going to take a number of touch points before someone decides to know, like, and trust you and spend money on a service that, getting in front of them and then getting them following you on Instagram, then you're teaching and building that value, then some will be ready and decide that, that this is an investment that, they want to make for their student. So that's really, really smart of you, Reilly. So I know we want to talk about, so about 5 minutes left here, about resources you recommend for, dietitians that are interested in learning more about nutrition for athletes, for performance nutrition. And I think it's interesting because a lot of what we talked about is not like these ergogenic aids and all of this. What we think we want to do and what like they actually need from us is, maybe not quite the same.
Yes. So if you are, a dietitian or a student that's looking to get involved in sports nutrition, CPSDA is a great resource. It's a non-academy membership group.
What is it? CPSDA?
SDA. It's the College and Professional Sports Dietitians Association.
Oh, that's a mouthful.
But what's great about that is they have a listserv that's very active. And we don't learn that much about sports nutrition in our undergraduate program. So they're always sending out research and stuff like that. So that's how you can, dive in to learn more about sports nutrition. The Academy also puts out like 5 position papers every couple of years that highlight topics on sports nutrition. So that's great if you wanted to read up on that.
Are you a member of SCAN?
I am a member of SCAN.
Okay.
So SCAN is a great resource as well.
Okay.
And then the ISSN, which is the International Society of Sports Nutrition.
Okay.
They all have crazy names.
Yeah, they do. Okay. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those tools and tips.
And then obviously if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, they're more than welcome.
Well, yeah, naturally. Just hit Reilly up. So I know you also have in your store on RD to RID, you have a number of presentation templates, like kind of your boot camp and then maybe like worksheet. What kind of things would people find in your store that they could use with student athletes?
Yeah. So I have the boot camp on there, which is, just a generic template that can be modified. I have my college athlete cookbook, which is really popular with my student athletes. Because one of the biggest questions I get is, what should I make for dinner? I'm like, well, let me show you.
Here you go.
So that's really popular. I have a healthy snacking handout, which is really, really popular with the athletes as well. It's like a mix and match handout. They pick one protein, they pick one carbohydrate, they have a snack. I have a couple, like an injury handout and a concussion handout that are also really popular. So
nice. Yeah, the questions that they have. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a link if you're watching, there's a link in the actual post to Reilly's store. So you can go there and check out all of her resources too. So yeah, if you have. Yeah. So that's really, really awesome. So thank you is there any, you've talked through a lot of different things. Is there anything you feel like we didn't touch on that would be valuable for people? And I'm going to make sure I'm not ignoring people's questions. Facebook was making a lot of noise. So I'm not sure if anybody missed it. I'm sorry, but Facebook was not cooperating for a minute. We can tag you later if we need to. Did we miss anything? Did we forget to cover anything that you're like, you need to know this?
I don't think so. I think that people shouldn't be afraid to work with student athletes. They're just normal people. So don't ever be afraid to reach out to athletic departments, or if you are passionate about sports nutrition, don't be scared to do it.
I think kind of the mantra from just our chat is really relationship first and nutrition second. You can't help them until, they trust you and think that you're really have their best interest in mind. So I think you really that message came loud and clear about that relationship first, and then you earn the opportunity to really share your wisdom about diet, about nutrition, and really meeting them where they are, with getting them hooked up with the food pantry, the grocery store tours. I really, this was just such a fun interview for me. So refreshing, and your energy is great. So I'm really thankful, and kind of seeing that you're living in these two different worlds. I think we always have people working full time, trying to go a private practice. What do you see? Like, what's your vision? Where are you headed, Reilly? Where are you going?
I don't know. I just love sports nutrition. I'm honestly like so passionate about it. So, I mean, I just want to keep, helping athletes any way I can. So that's what, just taking it day by day. So I'm just evolving kind of.
Yeah.
Just like Instagram, right?
Just like Instagram, keep doing great work and seeing what doors open, and making the decisions when they come. So this is really fun. So thank you so much for coming on the live show. You've been a great guest, and we will be turning the page and coming into June. I just put out the 2 event notices for June. We're having Jenna Gorham. She's going to talk about working with brands. So I constantly hear people like, I do brand work. I work with brands. I'm like, what does that even mean? And how does one get what does that look like? And how do I get my foot in the door? What is brand work? What skills do I need? So she's going to kind of talk about the types of work she does with brands and what the opportunities are for dietitians. So I'm really excited about that one. And then the second in June will be Rachel Paul. She's going to talk about passive income opportunities as a dietitian. You probably know her as a college nutritionist on Instagram, major following. She's also co-creator of the Beat the Algorithm for Instagram course. So she is someone who knows a little bit about creating a passive income product. So she's going to come on and be our second guest in June. So excited about those 2. Awesome. Cool. So everyone, thank you for tuning in to the live show. Thank you, Reilly, for sharing your knowledge about working with college athletes, both as a dietitian at an athletic program, and, how you're working, doing your boot camps and other work in your private practice. It was really eye-opening. So thank you. And awesome.
Thank you.
All right.